Fellow countrymen, this great republic is facing one of the most extraordinary situations in the world's history. It would be difficult to exaggerate the seriousness of the great conflict in which we are engaged, a conflict in which the fate of civilization is at stake, a conflict to which God has called us as a champion of freedom and democracy. We are by nature a peaceful people, but we are a fighting people where the rights of America and of humanity are concerned. It is unfortunate for the German military despot who precipitated this war that he did not realize beforehand that America has fighting spirit and national unity. He had
1917, the U.S. finally entered the First World War. Many volunteers swarmed the draft stations in order to enlist. After the war was declared on Germany on April 6, 1917, patriotism ran high. Many men were inspired to volunteer to join the U.S. forces and fight in the war. Songs were also created to encourage patriotism and men to enlist in the war. One such song, titled "America, Here's My Boy" by Peerless Quartet, is famous for inspiring such things.
There's a million mothers knocking at the nation's door. A million mothers, yes, and there'll be billions more. And while within each mother heart they pray, just like what one brave mother had to say. America, I raised a boy for you. America, you'll find him strong and true. Take a gun upon his shoulder.
Another influencing factor was government propaganda, such as this poster calling them to destroy this mad brute, which symbolizes the German nation. However, volunteers were not enough to fight in a war, and General John Pershing needed more men. Thus, the draft was formed. On May 17, 1917, the Selective Service Act was signed into law, authorizing President Wilson to increase the regular army, to bring into federal service the National Guard and National Guard Reserve, and to raise military force by a selective draft.
By June 1917, 9.5 million men had registered for the draft, and after 3 more draft registrations held in 1918, by the end of the war, the U.S. had a total of 24 million men registered. Nevertheless, only 11.8% or 2.8 million men were actually inducted into service. Most of the men called up on the first draft were rejected due to health reasons and the draft's strict qualifications. And over 300,000, a little more than 1% of those eligible, evaded the draft by simply just not showing up for registration or the physical examinations. By the end of the war, more than 2 million American soldiers had fought on the battlefields across Europe, and more than 50,000 of these men had lost their lives. After Armistice Day celebrations on November 11, 1918, these American soldiers waited to be demobilized back to their loved ones at home. However, this proved to be a complicated task for American officials who had failed to recognize the end of the war being so abrupt, and thus they failed to make preliminary plans for demobilization. At the end of the war, the government immediately rid of war agencies, leaving the task of demobilization solely to the War